Moshe Rabbeinu was also misaken that every 3 days, one shouldn't go 3 days without Krias HaTorah. And for that reason, Mondays and Thursdays we also lane. And the Takana developed afterwards with Ezra HaSofer till the Zman HaMishnah. But the bottom line is, there's a mitzvah of Krias HaTorah whenever there's a tzibur together. And there's aliyahs. On Shabbos, 7 aliyahs. During the week, 3 aliyahs. As the Mishnah tells us in Megillah, on Shabbos, we can even add on more than 7 aliyahs. It's a minimum of 7 aliyahs. Mondays and Thursdays, it's a maximum of 3 aliyahs. Yom Tov, Yom Kippur, Rosh Chodesh is 4, Yom Tov is 5. But that's part of the mitzvah of Krias HaTorah, which, as I say, goes back to Moshe Rabbeinu, of having people called up to the Torah. 7 people on Shabbos is a chiv me'ikei adin from Zman HaMishnah and earlier. That's 7 people. It shouldn't just be we read the Torah. 7 people have to be called up with a birchas HaTorah, a bracha before, a bracha after, and it's 7 different people who have to be called up. And if we learn the Torah without calling up 7 people, we haven't fulfilled the takon of Krias HaTorah. It's 7 separate people, men over the age of bar mitzvah, who have to be called up. And the shaila comes at the time of shas hatchak, a time of difficulty, as it is last few weeks, and it will carry on like that. When we have a Krias HaTorah, we're going to have a tzibur in Yitz Hashem. It's happened in the last few weeks for those who have had minyanim in their gardens. Firstly, the question, the basic question is that people cannot come up to the Torah, either because they want to keep social distancing. So it's very difficult for the Baal Korah and the person who's making the bracha. We're going to need 7 different people to make brachas. How can they both come up to the Torah? And of those people who did have garden minyanim, where it's been 6 people in one and 6 people in the other, whatever it is, and you cannot call up people from another garden. So we've got a case of where we want to fulfill the mitzvah of Krias HaTorah, but we're unable to fulfill that part of having 7 different people call up to the Torah. And the question in halacha, which it's been in Eretz Yisrael, in America, the shayla has been, how does one fulfill to the best of our ability this mitzvah of Krias HaTorah with 7 people making brachas? The truth is, this is not the first time the shayla has come up. And it's a sefta, and it's a halach in Shulchan Aruch. I'm just going to bring up the Ma'amakomis if I may. I'll use a share screen if I can. Am I able to share screen, Aaron? No.
Should be able to. Should be able to. Does that option not come up?
No, you disabled me.
Oh, okay, I'll have to work out. Might give me 1 second. I'll just see if I can figure out.
Maybe if you hand over a host to me, I don't know.
Yeah.
You think I can do it? Ah, very good. Okay. Yeah, so coming back again. So it's really a halach in Shulchan Aruch. Let's just understand how the takon of Krias HaTorah works. It used to be at the time of the Mishnah and at the time of the Gemara, to fulfill the mitzvah of 7 people being called up, it was actually, they didn't have the concept of a Baal Korah and 7 different people being called up to say the bracha. The real mitzvah is that 7 different people should come up to the Torah, make the brachas, and do the kriya themselves. That's the real mitzvah of Krias HaTorah. That 7 different people get called up, they make a bracha before, a bracha after, but the main thing is that the people who get called up, they're the ones who actually do Krias HaTorah. It was only after the Gemara, after the Zman HaGemara finished, then the Rishonim, the Rosh, and it's brought down in Shulchan Aruch, they introduced a concept that some people were unable to actually learn from the Sefer Torah. Some people were embarrassed. We don't want to embarrass those people who can't learn. So then they instituted, the Rishonim, after the Gemara finished, they instituted the concept that there's a Baal Korah who learns, the Baal Korah learns, and 7 people get called up. But although the Baal Korah learns, but says the Rosh, this is important. This has become more or less international as far as I know, especially in Krias or Ashkenaz, that there's a Baal Korah who learns, and 7 people come up and they make the brachas. But says the Rosh, how on earth do you fulfill the takana? If these 7 people, they just make the bracha but they don't lane, it's the Balkara next to him who lanes. How do they fulfill the takana? Says the Rosh, although we ask a Balkara to lane, but we ask the one who makes the bracha to read simultaneously with him from the Sefer Torah. And says the Rosh, that's extremely important because we need 7 people to read from the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu and Ezra and Mesakim, that 7 people lane from the Torah with brachas. So although we ask nowadays that a Balkara lanes, because some generally people who are called up weren't able to lane, but they have to read together. That's what the Rosh says. We'll see later that the Ramah argues. But the Rosh and Shulchan Aruch are of the opinion that we have taken the Krias HaTorah away from the person who makes a bracha and we've asked somebody else to do it. But in order to fulfill the mitzvah, the one who makes a bracha has to read together. And if he doesn't read together, it's a bracha levatala. You haven't been yet to the mitzvah. So what we're doing nowadays, after the time of the Rosh and Shulchan Aruch, is we're having 7 people being called up. But at the same time, those people who call up, they have to read together with the Balkara. Comes the Rosh and the Shulchan Aruch. What would happen if you have a minyan of 10 people, where there's a Balkara, he's number 1. The other 9 people cannot read from the Torah. They're unable to read from the Torah. The Rosh says you cannot call up people who cannot read from the Torah. If they're unable to read, even together with the Balkara, then it's a bracha levatala. So you can only call up those people who can read. Says the Rosh, says the Shulchan Aruch. What do you do if the only person who can read from the Torah is a Balkara? The other 9 people are unable to read. So there's no point in calling them up to say brachas. They're able to say brachas, but there's no point in telling them to say brachas. It's a bracha levatala. We've got to fulfill the 7 people that in order to make a bracha, they have to read. They read quietly together with the Balkara. But if they can't even read from the Torah, says the Shulchan Aruch, you don't call them. So who are you left with? The only one you can call up is the Balkara himself. He's the only person who can read from the Torah. He's only one. You need 7 aliyahs. Says the Shulchan Aruch, the Balkara makes a bracha 7 times. In other words, it was a takana that 7 people get called up. Here we're unable to call up 7 different people because 9 out of 10 of them are unable to read from the Torah. And the Rosh says it's ma'akiv that they have to read. So it's the Balkara who makes the brachas, and he makes a bracha rishona. He reads the first part of Parsha, he makes a bracha achrona, then he starts again. 7 times he reads a bracha rishona and bracha achrona. And if I can just read out the Shulchan Aruch, it's in Kuf Mem Gimel. I said the Marmakonis, but it's I think on page 2. I think it is. Yes, Simon Kuf Mem Gimel Sif Hey. I've got it here up on the screen. Beis HaKnesses she'ein bohem misha yedea likros elo echad. If you've got a shul where there's only one person who's able to read from the Torah, nobody else can read, even together with the Balkara they can't read. Yevorich, the Balkara shall make a bracha. V'yikok tzas psukim yevorich lacharem. He should read a few psukim, then make a bracha afterwards. V'choyzel levorich tchila, and the same Balkara that makes again a bracha, another bracha rishona. V'yikok tzas psukim yevorich lacharem. He does sheni, then shlishi. V'chen yaseh kama pa'amim. So he does many times, depending how many aliyahs you need. On Shabbos, he'll have to do it 7 times. On Mondays and Thursdays, he'll do it 3 times. On Shreddis, he'll do it 4 times. Yom Tov will do it 5 times. Yom Kippur will do it 6 times. Basically, when the other people are maratzim, you've got a minyan, but they can't come to the Torah. Granted, the Rosh says they don't have to actually lane. It's about curling, but they got to lane together. Otherwise, it's about and they can't. So what do? Says the Shulchan Aruch, that the Balkara lanes, he makes a bracha, and he makes a bracha 7 times. Let me just bring you a little bit of background to this, because this is a Shulchan Aruch who's going with the Rosh. The Rosh I mentioned to you a few minutes ago. The Rosh's opinion is that although nowadays we don't expect the people who come up to the Torah to lane themselves, we appoint a Balkara, but as I said to you, they still have to read with. And if they don't read with, it's a bracha levatala. There's no point in them making brachas if they don't read with. And the Shulchan Aruch says it many, many times. If we go back 3 or 4 times, the Shulchan Aruch brings this shitta. We'll see it soon. The Ramah argues, but the Shulchan Aruch, the Beis Yosef, the first one is Kuf Lamed Hey Sif Daled. Aminag Poshut, the straightforward custom, says the Mechaber. Shafilu Kohen Hamaoretz Kodim Likros Ifnei Chacham Gadol Yisrael. The number one aliyah always goes to the Kohen. If he's an Amoritz, he still gets precedence over a Chacham Yisrael. The Kohen Amoritz comes first. Says the Shulchan Aruch, "V'hu shehakohen yedea likros." But it's only if this Amoritz he can read from the Torah. Shem eino yedea likros heich yavorach al Torah. Here the Shulchan Aruch spells it out clearly. That if he can't read, how can he make a bracha? Granted, we've got a Baal Korah there, but it's not good enough for the Baal Korah to read and him to listen. It's not good enough for the one to make a bracha to listen. The one who makes a bracha has to read together. So if this Kohen Amoritz can't even read, then you can't call him up. This is the first time the Shulchan Aruch says it clearly. That like the Rosh, that although we don't expect him to lein loud, but it's a bracha of HaTorah if he doesn't lein together. And again, in Kuf Lamed Tes, Sif Beis, if I can point you to Kuf Lamed Tes Sif Beis, the second time, Misha Eini Yedea Likros, somebody who's unable to read from the Torah, we have to object to him going up to Sefer Torah. If he can't even read together with the Baal Korah, he cannot go up. What happens if you desperately need him? He's a Kohen or Levi. There's nobody else besides him. So the Shulchan Aruch says, if whilst the Baal Korah reads and he can read from the writing of the Sefer Torah, he can read together with him, that's fine. But if he can't even read simultaneously when he hears about Korah reading, the second time the Shulchan Aruch says that it's not good enough for the Baal Korah to read, the one next to him who had the bracha, he's got to read together. And if you can't do that, you can't call him up. And the third time is in Kuf Mem Aleph, Sif Beis, where the Shulchan Aruch says in Sif Beis, the Gemara says you mustn't have two people reading at once. As we know, the rule is Trei Koli Lemishtamoi. If you hear two voices at once, the tzibur, the public, cannot concentrate on two voices. So you cannot have two people reading at once. Elo says the Shulchan Aruch, Ha'oleh koreh, or shliach tzibur sheisik. Either the one who goes up reads, he makes a bracha and he reads, and the one next to him, the shliach tzibur, is quiet. Or the way we do, Shliach Tzibur Koreh, the Shliach Tzibur, the Baal Koreh reads loud, and the one who's Oile LeBrocha, one of the seven people, he makes a bracha, but he shouldn't read loud. However, says a Shulchan qualification, he's not allowed to read loud. But he must read simultaneously. Because if he doesn't read together, it's a bracha of HaTorah. There's no point in him making bracha before and after and relying on the Baal Korah to read. He's got to read together. 3 times the Shulchan Aruch says like the Rosh. That granted the Rosh says we don't need people to lein themselves. We can appoint a Baal Korah to lein, but that's only on condition if the one who makes a bracha, although he doesn't lein, he has to read together. 3 times the Shulchan Aruch says that. And on the back of those 3 Shulchan Aruchs, comes the Shulchan Aruch in the 4th one, the one we mentioned earlier, Kuf Mem Gimel Sifei. Beis HaKnesses she'ein b'hem mi sheyedea likros elo echad. If you've got a Beis HaKnesses where only one person is able to read from the Torah, the Baal Korah, all other 9 are unable to read. They can't even read simultaneously from the Sefer Torah. They just cannot read the letters. And what happens? Says the Shulchan Aruch, we're not going to be able to call up 7 different people. There's no point in them making brachas. They can make brachas, but that doesn't help us. There's going to be a bracha of HaTorah. So what do? We tell the Baal Korah to make the 7 brachas himself. He makes a bracha, he lanes, he makes another bracha chorna. He has a second aliyah, a third aliyah, a 4th aliyah, depending whether it's Shabbos or Mondays or Thursdays. But that's the principle of the Shulchan Aruch in 4 places. And it comes with this solution when you have people who cannot go up to the Torah. And according to that, if we come back to our scenario of a case where you cannot have the Baal Korah and people being Oile LeTorah at the same time, whether it's because the Oile LeTorah wants to keep wants to keep us 2 meters apart. Who knows? If the government permits 1 meter, we might be able to get 2 people close to the Sefer Torah. But as long as it's 2 meters apart, they can't come near. Or they happen to be in another garden for those people who have garden minyanim and they don't want, and they can't go into the garden where the Sefer Torah is. So what do? You can't have 7 different people making brachas on the Torah. And the takana was you need 7 aliyahs. So we'll do like the Shulchan Aruch says. We'll tell the Balkira, you stand in the Torah, you read the whole Sedra, but stop at Sheni, Shlishi, Revi, and each time make a bracha achrona and then a bracha rishona, exactly like the Mechaber Shulchan Aruch Paskin here on the case when nobody when they're Amoratzim and they can't lay. The Balkira does it. This Shulchan Aruch is a Tosefta, so it comes from a Tosefta from the times of the Tanoim. This Tosefta discusses what happens. We'll see in a minute. What happens when you've only got one person who read, 9 people who can't read? And the Tosefta seems to say, like the Shulchan Aruch, that the Balkei makes a brachos, and that's what many poskim in Eretz Yisrael and Rabbonim in London said that's what they should do here. The Balkei should make 7 brachos. However, there may be another solution, a better in the sense you'll get 7 different people making the brachos. Although they can't come anywhere near the Sefer Torah, they've got to stand in it. They can't come near there. As I say, either they want to keep distant or in another garden. There may still be a better solution. What's the solution? The solution goes like this. We've mentioned the Shulchan Aruch 4 times, who follows the shit of the Rosh, that after the Gemara, the time of the Gemara was finished, the minhag was that the 7 people who were called up didn't lane themselves. We asked about Korah to lane, in order not to embarrass those people who didn't know the trop, they couldn't lane themselves. So we asked about Korah to lane. So far, so good. But we mentioned that the Rosh adds in one qualification, that the person who's being called up for the bracha, granted he doesn't lane, the Balkara lanes, and he must lane together. He's got to lane together with him. And we mentioned it 4 times in the Shulchan Aruch, that it's going to be a bracha of HaTorah. If you call up 7 people to make brachos, and you rely on the Kriya of the Balkara, and the one who makes a brachos doesn't read with, it's a bracha of HaTorah. That's the shitta of the Rosh. We took away the Krias HaTorah and gave it to the Balkara, but we expect the one to make a bracha to read together. However, the Ramah brings from a Maril. Maril was one of the Gedolei Ashkenaz, who the Ramah often paskins like, and the Maril disputes the Rosh. He says, you're right, nowadays, because we don't embarrass people, it's become the custom that a Balkara lanes and 7 people come up for the brachas. But says in Maril, why should they have to lane together with the Balkara? Let him make a bracha before, let him make a bracha at the end of the laning, let him listen to the Balkara laning, and we know there's a concept, a principle of Shomea Ka'ona. If you listen to somebody else doing anything, whether it's Kiddush or Shmones or whatever it is, it's as though you're saying it. So the one who comes up to the Torah, now that we say we don't expect him to lane, and we've appointed a Balkara to lane, so let the one who's making the brachas listen to the Balkara, and it's as though Shemeh Ka'on, it's as though the one who's making the brachas is also reading, and even if he doesn't read simultaneously with Balkara, it's absolutely fine. And that's the shit of the Maril and the Ramah, that in fact an Amoritz is allowed to be called up to the Torah, even if he's unable to read. We're talking about an Amoritz who can read, who knows the brachas. Somebody who knows the brachas, he knows Asher Bocha Bonu before, and he knows Asher Nasan Lanu afterwards. He just cannot lane from the Sefer Torah. He doesn't recognize the words. Says the Maril, it's fine to call him up because he'll make the brachas before and after. And he's one of the 7. He's got to lane. He'll listen to the Balkara, and that's Shemei Koina. So the Balkara would read loud. The one who's making the bracha would be silent and listen. And you've got Shemei Koina. Says the Ramah, in the name of the Maril, that I am absolutely fine to call up an Amoretz, or another example, Lo Yoleinu, a Sumo, a blind man. What do you do with a blind man? A blind man who unfortunately is unable to look in the Torah. So he doesn't need to lane, but there's a Balkara. And he knows the brachas by heart, before and after. According to the Shulchan Aruch, unfortunately, you cannot call up a blind man. In Ochanamba, he can make the brachas before and after, and the Balkara is laning. But according to the Rosh and the Shulchan Aruch, the one who's making the brachas has to read out of the Sefer Torah together with the Balkara, otherwise it's a bracha of HaTorah. So you can't call up an Amoritz, who might know the brachas but can't name from the Sefer Torah, and you can't call up a Suma, a blind man. The Ramah says no. I paskin the Maril that there's absolutely no reason now that there's a Balkara who's laning why the one who makes a bracha can't make the bracha even if he can't read. He's just quiet and he listens. This Ramah is brought down in Kuf Lametes Sif Gimel. If we can go back to Kuf Lametes Sif Gimel. I quoted you before Kuf Lametes Sif Beis, where the Shulchan Aruch says that the Baal Korah, that the one who's being called up has to reach with the Baal Korah, right? So otherwise it's a bracha levatala. In Sif Gimel, it's a long Sif, but towards the end of Sif Gimel, the Shulchan Aruch says Suma Eine Korah. A blind man cannot be called up to as one of the seven, even though he's not leaning. The Baal Korah is leaning. Why? Because even though he's not leaning loud, the Baal Korah is leaning loud, but he cannot read by heart. He's got to read inside, like the Rosh says. And therefore, unfortunately, a blind man cannot be called up. Says the Ramah, Umaril Kosa. However, the Maril says, the Achshov Korah Suma. Nowadays, a blind man is called up. For the same reason as nowadays we call up an Amoritz who may know the bracha, that he can't read the words from the Torah, even together with the Baal Korah, says the Ramah, we call them up. We call up an Amoritz, somebody who's unable to read from the Torah. So the same reason we call up a. And as the Mishnah Berurah says in Sifkon, we call up blind people. The Talmud, the Kivin Shal Neigen Shat Tzibur. Nowadays, since our custom is that the Shliach Tzibur reads, V'hu Korah Mitei Chaksav, and the Shliach Tzibur, the Baal Korah, is the one who reads from the Ksav. Shuv Kaptin on our Oila. We don't insist on the one being called up, but he should also read together. The Shomea Ka'ona, because as long as the one who makes a bracha listens to the Baal Korah, even if he can't read, it's equivalent to him reading. That's the principle of Shomea Ka'ona. And therefore, says the Maril, according to that, there's no reason why a blind man who knows the brachas by heart, or Namoritz who know the brachas, why can't they be called up? And that's the shit of the Ramah. And I think the next Mishnah also says, we have a custom to be lenient, even if the one who's reading together is unable to read from a Sefer Torah. And Amoritz, the minhag is we call him up, we allow him to make brachas if he can, even though he can't read together with Baal Korah. Must be because of Shemei Koina, Buadim Besuma, and therefore a blind man is the same din. And the Mishnah Berurah ends off with the halacha we paskin like the Maril. We call mokim the Pashas Porah or Pashas Zocher Nochen Shnei Krias Chatchila. However, Pashas Porah and Pashas Zocher is a Mishnah Berurah where it's a deraisa. It's best not to call up an Amoritz or blind man. But the Mishnah Berurah says clearly that according to the Ramah, there's absolutely no reason. The Ramah says it why you can't call up a blind man or an Amoritz. So if we come back now to this halach in Kuf Mem Gimel, a shul that only one person can lay, the Baal Korah can lay, the other 9 people, they're able to make brachas, but they can't even read together. Where the Shulchan Aruch says there's no option, you can't call up 7 different people. We'll have to use a fallback option. We'll have to ask the Baal Korah to have all 7 aliyahs taken for himself. It's far from the best. It's not the proper mitzvah. The proper mitzvah is you call up 7 different people. But you can't, because they've got to read together with us as a Shulchan Aruch. So we do a fallback, and it's Shas Atchak, we have no option. Only one person takes all 7 aliyahs. According to the Ramah, that's not the case. According to the Ramah, we've got a beautiful solution. We can call up the Amaratzim, we can call up Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar. We can call up 7 different people and fulfill the mitzvah. And as long as they know the brachas by heart, even though they can't read, it's fine. And the Mishnah Berurah says so. In fact, we can look at the Mishnah Berurah in Sifkot and Lamed Gimel. There's nobody else who can read together from the Sefer Torah with the Baal Korah. And the Mechaber says that the Baal Korah makes the 7 brachos. The Shulchan Aruch is going the Shitasoi, as we explained before 3 times earlier. The Kosav Shlomi said many times before that you cannot call up an Aretz. Therefore, our fallback option is to ask the Baal Korah to take all 7 aliyahs for himself. Unfortunately, this is not the best option because really the takana was that 7 different people should be called up, that the Mishnah says in Megillah, but we have no option. However, according to what the Ramah says, that we follow the Ramah, that we call up in Amoritz, we call up blind people. So according to the Ramah, this halacha would be different. According to us, who follow the ruling of the Ramah, we would call up 7 different people to the Torah, and they will make their brachas before and after. And that's a much better option because then you can invite 7 people to be called up. What comes out that lefi the Ramah, we call up people even if they don't read together. And as the Mishabur said, and the Gon and many others say that the halacha is like the Ramah, that we call up Amaratzim, we call up blind people, and if I may say, according to the Gon, you can even do lechatchila. The Gon believes in the Maril. We're going to see later that the Gon brings proofs to the Maril. Therefore, according to the Maril, it's absolutely fine for the one who's making a bracha not to read with. And therefore, according to this, the Mishabur says that you can call up 7 Amaratzim to the Torah as long as they can make brachas. Having said that, we, Bnei Ashkenaz, who follow the Ramah, we're willing to ask Amaratzim or blind people, Chas v'Shalom, to come up to the Torah, even though they can't read from the Torah, and to make a bracha before and after. I would suggest to you, I know you're all going to jump on me for this, but I would suggest to you, if anyway, we don't need the one who's only the Torah to read from the Torah. He's just got to hear the Baal Korah, Shemei Koina. All he does is make a bracha from before and after. So I would suggest to you, then I've got a solution for social distancing. Why should call up 7 different people? They don't need to go up to the Torah because there are more paschals out of Maril that they don't have to read from the Torah. All they need to do is make a bracha before and a bracha after. So I would suggest to you that if we hold that they don't need to go up and they don't need to read from the Torah, then they may not even have to go up to the Torah. They can sit in their seats. All 6 or 7 people can sit in their seats, miles away from the Sefer Torah, make a bracha before, make a bracha after, and listen to the Baal Korah, Shemei Koina. And you've more or less fulfilled your din, and you're much better off. You've got 7 people to read. Because according to the Ramah and the Gon and the Maril, the one who makes a bracha doesn't have to read from the Torah. So if he doesn't need to read from the Torah, let him sit in his place. Now we all know, of course, there is a concept of going up to the Torah, in Aliyah the Torah. But as I'm going to bring to you, Poskin, that's possibly only a milah, it's only an advantage in Kovedat Torah. It's a way to honor the Torah. But as far as the takana of 7 people being called, making brachas, and nowadays they don't learn anyway. From the times of the Rosh, it's the Baal Korah who learned. So I would suggest to you that to fulfill the mitzvah of 7 people making brachas, where anyway they're not learning, in principle they could stay in their seats. Or no, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe going up to the Torah is an intrinsic part. A blind man is allowed to make a bracha before and after and not read, as long as he listens, because he's gone up to the Torah. And Amoritz is allowed to make a bracha before and after, even if he doesn't need to together, but he's gone up to the Torah. But in social distancing and telling nowadays, they can sit in their seats at the back of the shul. And if we think of the big shuls of Alexander from Mitzrayim, they can sit to the back, make their bracha before and make their bracha after and listen to the Baal Korah. Maybe that's not sufficient. Very interesting. The question is, according to the Ramah, who doesn't require the one to make the bracha, do they need to go up really? Or no, they don't need to go up. And I found there was a machlokes in that show between 2 great poskim, and it became a machlokes in London among different rabbanim. And I tell you, in those streets where they had porch minyanim, and they had Krias porch minyanim, there were some who passed one way and some passed the other way. If I quote to you from, let's quote Moshe Sternbuch. Where Moshe Sternbuch says, he gives this solution. He says, if you pass an Ador more, and the Gon, who says a blind person can make a bracha, and an Amoritz can make a bracha, even though he's unable to read from the Torah, then really it's not so important to go up the Torah. It's not part of the Aliyah. They just need to make brachas. So stay in their seats and go up. Let me read quickly to you the one paragraph from Moshe Sternbuch. In Krias HaTorah, he's talking about porch minyanim or bulk minyanim that they had in Israel the last few weeks. They should make up a minyan like I discussed. They should stand in the balconies, and people in the balconies, two in this balcony, two in the next balcony, two in the next balcony, they should all see each other. When it comes to calling up 7 different people, the first couple of aliyahs you give to the balcony himself and to anybody who's together with him on the balcony. But those afterwards, one can honor the neighbors in the other balconies if they're close enough to hear the balcony reading. And although because of the distance from one balcony to the other, they're unable to look inside the Torah, so what? At this time of difficulty, one can rely on the God who passes the will. The Summa Yochalasis the Torah. Even a blind man who doesn't look in the Torah, he can't see the Torah, we call him up. Although he's blind and he can't read. And according to the Gon, he doesn't have to read from the Torah together with the Balkara. He's blind and we still call him up. Why? The Shemek Ha'ina. So they can wait, they can stay in their balconies and do the same. Then he adds in brackets. Although we know the custom is that anybody who wants to make a bracha, even according to the Maril, a blind man or Namoritz, he still goes up to the Sefer Torah. He goes up to the bim and he makes his bracha. That's a mitzvah min hamufcha, that's in order to beautify the Torah, to honor the Torah. But that's not part of the Aliyah. That's not part of the Aliyah. That's not part of the chelik of the bracha. It's good enough just to listen. And in our shuls, where they can't even get close to the Torah, they can sit in their seats. Says Moshe Sternbuch that if you follow the Maril, that the one who makes the bracha doesn't need to reach from the Torah. He can rely on the Balkara, like the Ramah says, like the Gon says, then he doesn't even have to go up to the Torah. He can sit in his seat and make the bracha from far. And it was partial to Moshe Sternbuch that there's no concept of going up to make a bracha. The actual, what we call aliyah making brachas, that's only covered the Torah to honor the Torah. It's not part of the mitzvah calling up 7 different people. And if anyway they're not going to read from the Torah, they could sit in their seats. That's how he felt. He doesn't bring any proofs to it. But that's what he says. If you can call up a blind man to go up to the Torah, then a man can sit back in his own seat to make a bracha in our times. Comes Reb Osher Weiss, and he totally disagrees with him. He says, you're right, a blind man can go up to the Torah. You're right, an Amoritz can go up to the Torah without reading from the Torah. But they've gone up to the Torah. You've got 7 different people, 7 Amoritzim who have gone up to the Torah. But that's, you've been Mekayim the mitzvah of 7 different people. Because they've gone up to the Torah. Part of the Aliyah is to go up and make a bracha. If you do up, then that's not an Aliyah Torah. Going up is not part of the Aliyah. It's not true. We just agreed very quick to do with balcony minyanim. So he says the solution we mentioned earlier, that the balcony should take the 7 aliyahs for himself. Then he says, the second paragraph, that which one of the great poskim, I imagine he refers to Moshe Sternbuch, who wrote, the Kimin Shnegim b'nei Ashkenaz al Summa Torah. Since the custom is that a blind man can go up to the Torah, who are dim b'mishem b'pesach cheres, If a blind man who can't read from the Torah can go up, then the same din would apply to somebody who's standing on his balcony and he makes a brachas 30 feet away from the Sefer Torah. Ein nirklar. It doesn't appear to me correct at all. There's no comparison between a blind man who at least goes up to the Torah, even if he doesn't read, he goes up to make his bracha, and to somebody who sits back in his seat. To Mikol Moken Tzorech, and he writes in bold, Lalos the Torah, but Lama Liada Sefer Torah. Part of the mitzvah of these 7 people, it's only called because he goes up to the Torah and he stands by the Sefer. And it's possible for him, that's not possible when you stand far, that you're not mechanical. We have a machlekes, we have Moshe Sternbuch and Bosher Weiss, and if I can say it was a machlekes in our town as well, northwest London, some followed the Moshe Sternbuch, some followed Bosher. Basically, that according to the Ramah, that the one who makes the bracha does not need to read from the Torah, does he still have to go up to the Torah? There's still you need 7 aliyahs, 7 different people going up to the Torah. So you're allowed to call up a summa, a blind man. You're allowed to call up an Amoritz, but they have to go up to the Torah. But that is the mitzvah of 7 people. Or no, Moshe Sternbuch is of the opinion that if anyway they're not laning, it's the Baal Korah who's laning. And the one who makes the bracha is reliant on Shemer Koino, then Me'ikar Adin, they don't even have to go up to the Torah. But neither of them, Moshe Sternbuch and Bosher Weiss, brings a proof to either of the two studim. Moshe Sternbuch is willing to be lenient that it's not important to go up to the Torah, whereas Bosher Sternbuch said you have to go up to the Torah. Where on earth are they coming from? Neither of those two bring any proof to what they're saying. Moshe Sternbuch feels it's not part of Aliyah to go up to the Torah, and Bosher Weiss says it is part. Where are they coming from? And I'd like to suggest to you, I know where they're coming from. And it's a machlokes rishonim, whether you have to go up to the Torah. And Bosher Weiss may well be correct, and I'll prove it to you, that part of the aliyah is to go up to the Torah, but it depends on the machlokes. Don't get a shock. It depends on the machlokes Rosh and Maril, whether a blind man can go up or not. The Rosh only held that a blind man can't go up because he felt that because the mitzvah is to go up. Let me explain what I mean. I've just spoken a little bit in riddles the last couple of sentences, so let me explain what I mean. I want to ask you all a shayla. We know the Rosh introduced this minhag that the 7 people who get called up to make a bracha don't do the Krias HaTorah themselves. We give it over to a Baal Korah. Because the Baal Korah, because we don't want to embarrass those people, they might not be able to lane by themselves. So we ask a Baal Korah to lane. But the Rosh says, nevertheless, the one who gets called up has to lane together with them. And the Maril argues. Let me ask you a question. This concept that 7 people have to go up was a takana from the Mishnah and long before the Mishnah. Part of the takana of Shem HaMelech and Ezra Sefer was that on Shabbos you call up 7 people. When those 7 people went up, at the time of the Mishnah, they didn't used to make a bracha before and after. Not every Oila L'Torah used to make a bracha before the laning, before his aliyah, and at the end of his aliyah. The takana was that the first person would make a bracha at the beginning of the Krias HaTorah, beginning of Parshas Shalach Lo, the aliyah number 1, the Kohen would make a bracha rishona. He would not make a bracha achron at the end. And all the intermediate aliyahs will not make any brachas. The last aliyah, the 7th one, will make a bracha achron at the end. That was lechatchila the takana. They instituted 7 people to be called up. But the actual brachas was aliyah number 1 made a bracha rishona, and the aliyah number 7 made a bracha achrona, and the other 7
I think we might have lost the Dayan's internet connection. Give me 1 second.
Was it my connection?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, we can hear you now.
Where did you lose me?
3 sentences ago.
Okay, let's just go back a second. That Bismana Mishnah. Thank you, Jeremy. Bismana Mishnah. Although there were 7 aliyahs, but the actual brachas was only the first one. The Kohen would make a bracha rishona, and the 7th one would make a bracha achrona. Never, all the aliyahs didn't make a bracha before and after. It was only later on they instituted at the time of the Gemara or towards the end of the time of the Tanoim, they instituted that every oiler should make a bracha before and after. And the Gemara explains why. The Gemara says it was a gezer, it was a decree, in case somebody would come late. Nobody does that today. But in case somebody comes late to laning, and he'd come in the middle of laning and he wouldn't hear any brachas, he wouldn't hear the first bracha, he'll say, hey, they're not making bracha rishonos. Or somebody leaves in the middle of Krias HaTorah, God forbid, and he doesn't hear bracha achrona. So he'll say, hey, God forbid, there's no bracha achrona. So they instituted that everybody makes a bracha rishona, bracha achrona. I'd like to ask you a shayla. At the time of the early Tanoim, where the Oilel HaTorah would not make a bracha before and after, again, the one who went up in the Aliyah number 3, he never made a bracha before and after. What would he go up for? He would go up to lane. Because remember, till the Rosh came along, everybody laned. So number 1 made a bracha rishona and he laned. No bracha achrona. Number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 will not make any brachas, they would lane. Number 7 would lane and make a bracha achrona. That's fine. Then the Rosh says, in my days, the times of the Rosh, he says, in my days, I feel that the Oilel HaTorah shouldn't lane. Give it over to a Baal Korah to lane. Can you have the custom of a Baal Korah laning at the early times of the Mishnah when Oilel HaTorah didn't even make any brachas? Would they have taken away the Krias HaTorah and given it to a Baal Korah and still called up 7 peoples in the early days of the Tanoim when the ones who came up never made any brachas? You could argue it's a joke now. The actual Krias HaTorah law that everybody should hear was the Baal Korah. We call up 7 people nowadays to make brachas. But in the early times of the Mishnah, where anyway the number 2, 3, 4, and 5 are not making brachas anyway, if we would have taken the Krias HaTorah away from them, then in what way would they be considered of an Oilel HaTorah? They're not reading, because we would already given over to the Baal Korah. If the Rosh would have lived at the time of the Mishnah I'm talking about, we would have given it over. And brachas they never made at the time of the Mishnah. So I would argue to you that maybe there's no concept at the early days of the Mishnah to take away the Krias HaTorah, because then the Oilel HaTorah not doing anything. The only time the Rosh says we took away the Krias HaTorah was after they were masakin that every single Oilel makes a bracha before and after. So then we don't mind taking the Krias HaTorah away and giving it to a Baal Korah, because at least the 7 different people are considered Oilel HaTorah, because they're the ones who make the bracha. It would really depend on whether going up to the Torah is part of the mitzvah. Because if we learn like a Bosh Havayis, and I'll prove it to you from the Rosh, that's simply being called up to the Torah, Yamoid Reuven ben Yaakov, and he goes up to the Torah. That's part of Aliyah Torah. So it could well be, even at the early days of a Mishnah, when he never used to make a bracha, and the Baal Korah was appointed to do the Krias HaTorah, one could still argue that there's a purpose in going up to the Torah, because he's the Oilel HaTorah. It's not the Baal Korah who's reading. He's the Oilel HaTorah. Either there's no brachas, one makes him the Oilel HaTorah. There's a Baal Korah reading on his behalf. He's not making brachas in the early times of the Mishnah. One makes him the Torah. But as the Bosh Havayis says, you're an Oilel HaTorah. They said Yamod and you go up to the Torah. It may well be that at the early times of the Mishnah, one could have instituted it. But according to Moshe Steinbuch, it doesn't make sense, of course. Because when they never made brachas, and going up to the Torah is not reckoned, is not the important point, then there's no point to give it to a Baal Korah and call up 7 people, because there's nothing for them to do. Brachas they never used to make, and if he's not, and Krias HaTorah has been given over to the Baal Korah. If you still think I'm talking in riddles, then let me bring you to a Rosh. And this is the most important point I want to bring to you tonight. There's a Rosh. The Rosh is in Siman, Peri Gimel, Megillah, Siman Aleph, and Siman Yud. On the right-hand column is Siman Aleph. On the left-hand column is Siman Yud. Siman Aleph, he just goes through the custom that I brought to you, that nowadays we took away the Krias HaTorah from each Oila and we gave it to the Baal Korah. I'm not going to read it because we're running short of time, but just to go quickly through the right-hand column, 3rd line down, that which we have a minhag nowadays, after the Gemara was finished, for the time of the Rishonim, that a Baal Korah lanes, Hainu, he says 2 reasons. I'm not going to do it. He said not to embarrass people, etc. I'm going to jump if you don't mind. Lekachiskinu. I don't know if you can see my cursor on the screen. Lekachiskinu. Therefore, we made it takana, says Rosh. Sheyikosh liachtzibor balkoyer should lane. Shehu boki bekri. He knows how to lane. Or mikol mokem, says Rosh. This is important Rosh I mentioned to you before, which is a Shulchan Aruch, not like the Ramah and not like the Marel. He says, although we took the balkoyer lanes, or mikol mokem gamo omed likos yikop benachas or bediktuk and liachtzibor. Nevertheless, the one who's making a bracha, he has to read together with the liachtzibor. This is a shit of the Rosh and the Shulchan Aruch, that a blind man can't go up. Shalete bracha levatala. But also she'eni yedei likos, if you call up an amoritz, ein yoy likos liachtzibor, ein yoy shikos liachtzibor, the liachtzibor should not call him up, but have your bracha levatala. It's a bracha levatala if you call up an amoritz, even though he's not laning. He's only making a bracha, but he's got to read together. It's not logical, says the Rosh, that if he doesn't lane, just because he's making the brachas, he doesn't need to lane together with the liachtzibor. Avad, he's got to lane together. That is the shit of the Rosh, and the Shulchan Aruch paskins is 4 times that an amoritz and the summa cannot go up. And the Rosh says it min asfaro, from logic. He doesn't bring any proof to it. But he feels that although the one who makes a bracha is not laning, he's got to read together. That's from logic. In Siman Yud, he says, I've got a proof from a Tosefta. A proof from a Tosefta. Where's the Tosefta? On the left column, 2nd line down. Listen to this Tosefta. I think we've come across this Tosefta. B'nei HaKnesses, she'ein lehem mi sheyikra ela echad. If you've got 10 people in a shul, and only one of them can read from the Torah. Only one. Remember, this is Shulchan Aruch we mentioned. Omed v'koyre v'yoshev. He stands up. He reads a bit of it till Sheni, then he sits down. V'omer, then he stands up, v'koyer, and he reads v'yeshev, and he sits down. 2nd time. V'omer, the 3rd time, v'koyer v'yeshev. The balkoyer takes all the aliyahs for himself. Afilu shiva pa'amim. Now what's going on? He's standing up and he's sitting down, and he's standing up and he's sitting down. Says Rosh, why doesn't he make a bracha? Says Rosh, a very simple answer. Because it's talking about Bisman HaMishnah. When the Oil and the Torah never made brachas. The only one who made the bracha was the first one who made the bracha in Shana, and the one at the end made the bracha Acharona. So he never made separate brachas. So and this balkoyer is the only one who can do the aliyahs. The other 9 people are maratzim. They can't come to the Torah. And there's no brachas to be made. So what makes this balkoyer have 7 aliyahs? He's not making any brachas. So the only way he does it is he stands up and then he sits down, and he stands up. Then he sits down and stands up. Says the Rosh, let's read it. V'zeh be a man. That was the early times of the Mishnah. When number 1 made a bracha Shona, number 7 made a bracha Acharona. Therefore, you'll have to sit down in between. But today, we're all 7 aliyahs, they each make a separate bracha. I know I can't call up amaratzim. I know it's only the balkoyer who can take 7 aliyahs. But he won't have to stand up and sit down. He can make 7 brachas. Okay. And that, the Herech Bayri, what are we talking about? What's this Tosefta talking about? How can it be about 1 million of people? You need 10 people, but only 1 can read. You need 10 people, you need 1 million. We're talking about when 9 of them are amaratzim, they cannot read from the Torah. Says Rosh, now let's listen carefully. I've got a Tosefta, which says that when I've got 9 amaratzim and 1 balkoyer, how do you give out 7 aliyahs? The balkoyer takes all the aliyahs for himself, because the amaratzim can't come up to the Torah. Says Rosh, this is not my halacha, it's a Tosefta. Now, if anybody's going to come and argue with me one day, says Rosh, he was thinking of the Maril. The Maril says we can call up amaratzim. Remember the Maril, the Ramah, the Gon. They all say you can call up amaratzim. Says Rosh, I don't understand. It's against the Tosefta. Why does a balkoyer have to take all 7 aliyahs for himself, which is not the best type of takana? Give out to the 7 amaratzim. If anybody's going to argue with me and says that nowadays when the shliach tzibur, the balkoyer is lame, even an amoritz can go up, then why does the Tosefta say the balkoyer takes all aliyahs? I've got a much better solution, says Rosh. Call up the amaratzim. V'zuhi rai l'masha kasavti le'el. This Tosefta is a proof to what I told you before. The Mishnah Yedea Likosh L'Yale L'Torah. The Namaretz can't go up even though the Balkar is laning. If we would pass him like the Maril came a few years later, but the Rosh says if anybody argues with me and says like the Maril that an Amoritz nowadays can be called up because he's not laning anyway, and he'll rely on Shemer Koina, then surely the Tosefta brought a better solution. Much better to call up 7 Amaratzim than the Balkar taking all that lease for himself, like we saw in the Mishnah Berurah. Comes out, the Rosh brings the raya that Amaratzim and blind men are not called up from a Tosefta. From a Tosefta. Tosefta says when you have 9 Amaratzim, the Balkar has got to take all aliyahs. Whereas if you pass like the Maril, that Amoritz is allowed to go to the chair as long as the Balkar reads, then why does the Tosefta not give a better solution of calling up 7 people? And as we mentioned, the Mishnah Berurah says, the Ramah would hold you do, but it's against the Tosefta. The Maril is against the Tosefta. If we go back to the Gon, who's the one who passes out the Gon? Who's the one who passes out the Maril, the Ramah, and the Gon? The Gon believes in the Maril. The Gon says the Maril is 100% right. Amaratzim can go up to the Torah, and Chas v'Shalom blind people can go up to the Torah. Can we read the Maril? Umaril Kosab, the Mavarch al Krias Hashatz. The Maril says that even an Amoritz, a blind man can go up. Commercial Kosab, but Tosefta Megillah Perek base. First he brings another Tosefta. Says the Gon, I believe in the Maril. Now Amoritz is allowed to go up, and a Summa is allowed to go up. Where do I get a proof from? From a Tosefta, another Tosefta Megillah, and Yerushalmi. He brings a Tosefta in Yerushalmi which support the Maril, and therefore the Gon believes in the Maril. Okay. Can we go to the next column? The Dafka Likos also betel Yasuma, because a blind man can't be a Balkara. I agree he can't be a Balkara, but he can be called up. Then he's challenged by the Kasha of the Rosh. That which the Rosh brings an incredible raya. And the Rosh says nobody will ever be able to answer this raya from a Tosefta in Perek Gimel. Let's go over the Tosefta. When you have 9 Amaratzim and 1 Balkara, the Tosefta says, who takes all 7 aliyahs? The Balkara. But according to me, says the Gon, I personally the Maril, there's a much better solution. The Rosh also me. Why don't we call out the 7 Amaratzim? A beautiful question from the Rosh. Says the Gon, I just don't understand what he's talking about. I don't understand the kasha. Any maven, I don't see a beginning of a kasha. You know why the Tosefta about Korah goes up and not 7 Amaratzim? Because the Tosefta was written via mayhem at the times of the Tanoim. At the times of the Tanoim, who made brachas? The Baal Korah made the bracha. Of course, I agree. If the Baal Korah is going to make a bracha, then the Torah will have to read the Torah himself. Apologies. At the time of the Mishnah, where there were no brachas, then the 7 people who were called up, what makes them into an Oila Torah? They had to read. What else makes them into an Oila Torah? They didn't make their own brachas. So if you've got 9 Amaratzim and no brachas, then they can't go up to the Torah because they don't make brachas, and of course they can't read from the Torah. So you'll have to appoint a Baal Korah, and he'll have to take all that list for himself. You can't call up 7 people because there's nothing for them to do. They can't read from the Torah, and they can't make brachas. So of course the Tosefta says your only solution is unfortunately to give 7 aliyahs to a Baal Korah. That's why the Tosefta said it. Of course I agree at the time of the Mishnah that there's no point in calling up Amaratzim because they don't make brachas and they can't be Balei Kriya. To be a mayhem says a God, Lohim Avochem, Elohishim V'achron. Ulamayalu, not Velomayalu. Ulamayalu with a shavor. What purpose is there for them to go up? They're not making brachas. They can't learn from the Torah. So of course they can't go up. And unfortunately, you'll have to tell the Baal Korah to take all 7 aliyahs for himself. But says the God, that's all of the time of the Tosefta. But nowadays, where everybody makes their own bracha, then of course you can appoint a Baal Korah to read, and everybody can make their own brachas, and the one who makes a bracha doesn't have to read together. He can be Shemer Ka'ina. He's made a bracha. What makes him into Oila Torah? He makes his own bracha before and after. The blind man will be called up as Ravi and make a bracha before and a bracha after. This whole discussion of old people, blind people, no reading given to Baal Korah is only after, once instituted, that everybody makes their own brachas. But if only the time of the Mishnah was no brachas at all to be made, then of course the one who went up had to read. And that's why the Tosefta says you can't give it to Amaratzim. The Baal Korah had to take it for himself. But nowadays, where every one of the 7 makes their own brachas, now we can start debating whether one who has to make brachas, he's got to read together with the Baal Korah. The Rosh feels yes. I say the Gon, I brought earlier to Sefton and Yishalmi, who says they don't need to read. They can listen, they make their own brachas. And if you ask me from the Tosefta that the Rosh says, I just don't understand what your question is. In other words, a Rosh for the Tosefta in Perigimel, he says it's a proof and nobody's going to be able to answer this proof. And the Gon says, I don't see the beginning of the proof. The Machlekes, the Rosh, and the Gon is one simple point. The Rosh says, even at a time when the intermediate aliyahs, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, never made brachas, if you would hold that Amoritz can go up, then they could go up even if they never made brachas. Even though they're not laning, because they can't read from the Torah, you'd have to give to somebody else. Even though at the time of the Mishnah there were no brachas to make, there's still an aliyah of Torah. What does a Rosh mean? You know what the Rosh means? Because being called up to the Torah, an aliyah Torah is part of the job of the 7 people. The mitzvah, which Moshe, whoever was Masakin 7, was that 7 people should be called up to go up to the Torah, maybe not even to make brachas. At the time of the Mishnah, they never made brachas. And if they can't lane, they can appoint somebody else to lane. But at least to go up, the mitzvah is 7 people have to be Oile La Torah. And that could apply even Bismana Mishnah when there were no brachas. If the Maril would be right, then you'd have a solution for Amaratzin, even at the time when they never made brachas. Call up 7 people. Says a Rosh, if the Tosefta didn't give that solution, and it could have done even at the time of the Mishnah, it's not a solution. And although one person can lane and another one can be called up or make a bracha afterwards, after the Zman Mishnah, but he's got to be able to read from the Torah. And that's why the Tosefta didn't give that solution. Says a Rosh, if the Maril would be right, it would have been a solution even at the time of the Mishnah. Because in the time of the Mishnah, where there were no brachas, but there's still a concept of Aliyah Torah. And if the Maril would be right, the Amaratzim go up, they could go up even without brachas. And the Tosefta didn't get that solution. Therefore, says the Rosh, the Maril is wrong. How will the Maril himself answer the question? The Maril who believes that Amaratzim nowadays can go up, even if they can't read. So why didn't the Tosefta give that solution? Says the God, I don't understand. Because there's no point. The Tosefta was written at the time of the Mishnah, where they never made brachas to intermediate ones. So if he's not going to lane, and he's not going to make a bracha, there's nothing for him to do. Because the Gon held that Aliyah LaTorah doesn't mean to go up to the Torah. Otherwise, it'd still be a solution, as the Rosh says. The Aliyah LaTorah just means to lane, and later on to make brachas. But if nowadays we take away the kriya, we give it to Baal Korah, all we have left is the brachas. Okay? By the time of the Mishnah, if you had an Amoritz, of course you couldn't call him up. Because he couldn't lane from the Torah, so you'd have to give it somebody else to lane. There were no brachas to be made, and that's all there is, says a Gon. So if we want to hold like the Maril, says a Gon, if we want to hold like the Maril, then you'd have to say that the Aliyah LaTorah is not part of the most important intrinsic part. The part is to read or to make a bracha. And it's for that reason, the time of the Tosefta, that's the only way the Maril is going to answer the Tosefta. How is the Maril going to understand Tosefta? Why didn't the Tosefta give the solution? Because the Tosefta is talking about where he can't lane and there's no brachas to be made. So there's no point being called up. The Gon feels that being called up to Torah is not the intrinsic part. The part is to lane and be called up and make a bracha. If he can't lane, then at least make a bracha. But if he can't make a bracha, no point in calling up. But calling up in itself, going up to the Torah, is not an intrinsic part. Therefore, to sum up, and I'll show it to you in the Moshe Sternbuch, that the Rosh Weiss is right. In the Rosh himself, who holds that a blind can never go up, and Amoritz can never go up, even nowadays, because although they can make brachas, they can't read. The Rosh is held that the Aliyah LaTorah is part of the Aliyah. And that was his custom to Tosefta. So if the Maril would have been right, it would have worked even at the time of the Mishnah. The Rosh holds that Aliyah could have been done even at the time of the Mishnah. Because Aliyah is a chelik of being called up. And that's how Rosh Weiss is saying it. That nowadays there's no point in an Amoritz standing in his seat, a blind man sitting in his seat and making a bracha. Or nowadays, where with social distancing sitting on the seat, because Aliyah LaTorah is intrinsic in the 7 people. Otherwise, he would never have had a kasher on Tosefta. But that's a Rosh. But we don't pass like the Rosh. We pass like the Ramah and the Maril. That a blind man can go up to the Torah and make just the bracha. And the Mods can go up. And the only way is that the Gon says to argue on this point. Why did the Tosefta not give that solution? Because there is no concept of going up. It's only laning and making a bracha. Or at least making a bracha. But there's no laning and no bracha. He can't lane and he never made bracha. There's no point calling up. Because there is no aliyah l'Torah.
So I think we've lost the internet connection. Just
That's why it's not difficult for them to set this. What?
Oh, so we lost you for a couple of sentences again. Sorry.
Okay, I apologize. So just to go back, Mashenke and the Gon and the Maril, who say that an Amoritz is allowed to, nowadays, an Amoritz or Suma can go up to the Torah because they listen Shemer Ka'ina. So according to them, why didn't the Tosefta give that solution? The only way to justify them, like the Gon says to me, it's bullshit. Now, at the time of the Mishnah, there was no point in Amoritz going up because he didn't make a bracha either. There was no takon or brachas. So in what way is he no Torah? Must be, if you hold out the Maril and the Gon, there's no concept of aliyah Torah. Otherwise, it would have applied at the time of the Mishnah. And then you're stuck from the Tosefta. Aliyah Torah is not part of it. It's only being called up to lane or to make brachas. They're dependent one on the other. If we hold out the Gon and the Maril and the Ramah, that a blind man and Amot can go up, then in order not to be shredded to Tosefta, l'chura, going up to the Torah is not important, because if it was important, then they'd have shred the Rosh Hashanah Tosefta. That's not the intrinsic part. And therefore, if we pass in the Gon and the Ramah and the Maril, in principle, a blind man or an Amoritz can sit back on his seat when he makes a bracha. The main thing is he's got to demonstrate he's an Ola Torah. Either he goes up and he lanes himself, Amoritz and a Suma can't. So then he makes a brachas. Nowadays, we all make brachas. So now he can make brachas. Now he doesn't have to go out. There's no concept of Aliyah Torah. And therefore, it would be correct to say, in times of social distancing, where you're making brachas, remember from the times of the Gemara, they made brachas. Once you make brachas and you don't need to from the Torah, Aliyah Torah is not that important. It's not the intrinsic part. And it's only as covered that Torah. And therefore, you could really sit back if you couldn't get anywhere near the Torah and make the brachas from afar. If I can go back to Moshe Sternbuch, and I'll finish here, it's late, I apologize. When the Moshe Sternbuch says that going up to the Torah is not so important, and they can stay in the seats and make a bracha, but it's only covered that Torah, I want to show you two words in the Moshe Sternbuch. This whole custom of going up to the Torah, and Amoritz or Sumo going up to the Torah, even though they're not going to read Torah, the Das Hagro Hainu Mishum Kavod Torah. It's not intrinsic in the Aliyah. But I don't know if you noticed two words, the Das Hagro. Now I don't know if one can be Medaik or Moshe Sternbuch's words like a Rishon, but when he introduces this concept that it's not intrinsic to go up to the Torah, he's not saying everybody agrees to that. I'm saying like, according to the God. He's being mechadish that one doesn't need to intrinsically go up to the Torah, but he says it's only come to the God. Where does he get this from? Where does he get from if he's going to be mechadish from his own svara, that going up to the Torah is not an intrinsic part, and according to the Maril you can stay in your seat and make a bracha, then it's got to be agreed by everybody. Why is it only in the God? But the way I've demonstrated to you, Be'ez Hashem, in the Rosh clearly doesn't say that. The Rosh clearly holds that going up to the Torah is intrinsic. And even at times when they never made brachas, at the times of the Mishnah, that Aliyah 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 never made brachas. Nevertheless, the Rosh said, and Amoritz, according to the Maril, should still get an Aliyah. What's he getting an Aliyah for? He's in the Khan lane, he's not making brachas. Torah says he's still one of the 7 Aliyahs, because he's going up to the Torah. That's a part of it. That was Rosh's kasha. But in order for the Gon to answer it, he says, I don't believe in such a thing. At the time of the Mishnah, and Amoritz to Khan lane, and he's anyway not making brachas, there's nothing for him to do. So of course the Tosefta didn't give our solution. But nowadays, says the Gon, Avada, there's a solution that you give aliyahs to Amoratzim and to blind people before you tell the Balkari to take all 7 aliyahs for himself. Says a Moshe Sternbuch. So if it's not an intrinsic part of the aliyah, then I would suggest, it's only Mishum Kavod Torah, I would suggest you then, you should he should give up on this concept of Kavod HaTorah, rather than tell the Baal Korah to take all 7 aliyahs for himself, and he hasn't fulfilled the proper mitzvah 7 aliyahs. Give it to 7 people, and although they can't get anywhere near the Torah, they stay in their seats. They won't fulfill Kavod HaTorah, but they will fulfill the mitzvah of 7 different aliyahs, 7 different people getting aliyahs. Okay, I apologize, it's taken a bit longer than I thought. I don't know if there's any questions.
Can I jump in with one quick question, please? I had 3, but I just want to get Mincha in just before Shkia, which is coming up very, very quickly. So with regard to Bisman Hazeh, though the Baal Koreh who takes the 7 aliyahs, where's the source to miss out the maftir and go straight into, well, we actually, if somebody wants to read the HaTorah. The halacha brought around here is that we don't do a maftir for the one who actually does all the 7 aliyahs himself.
He takes all 7 aliyahs for himself, and then he does maftir. The whole concept of the maftir, of the one who does HaTorah reading, is only that he shouldn't do the HaTorah without reading. It's not common for the Torah to read HaTorah without Torah. But if anyway this person is taking the 7 aliyahs for himself, there's no makota to do another kriya. That's what I'm saying. The main thing is the one who does the HaTorah has the Krias HaTorah as well, but he's had the Krias HaTorah. That's what I'm saying. It's a chiddush that the one who does HaTorah gets an aliyah Torah. But the Rishonim say that it's not right that you should read from Nevi'im and not read from the Torah.
Yeah.
But that's clear. But I think it's put in Shulchan Aruch. Jeremy, I think it's put in Shulchan Aruch. If the one who gets HaTorah has had an earlier aliyah, or the 7th one gets it, then there's no point to give up an 8th aliyah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I'll leave it there.
Very good, James. Thank you.
Any other questions if anyone wants to take themselves off mute? Okay, well, obviously not. So thank you very much, Dayan and Simons, for giving us a very interesting and relevant share this evening. Next week we will, please God, have Rabbi. Next week we will, please God, have Rabbi Daniel Feldman from YU joining us. Time to be confirmed. It'll probably be around 9 o'clock rather than 8 o'clock. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.